In the Red Sea, the aircraft carrier USS Harry Truman, a colossus of the United States Navy, is now under fire from the Houthis. In the Red Sea, the Iran-backed Houthis launched a lightning attack against U.S. and Israeli forces. In their most recent statement, spokesperson Yehia Sari not only confirmed the attacks on the USS Harry Truman, but also on an Israeli military target in Tel Aviv, making it clear that the conflict is not limited to Yemen, but has much larger implications. With this, the Houthis reiterate that they will not stop their struggle until the oppression of Palestine and Gaza ends, a message that continues to resonate strongly. Get ready and don't go anywhere, because what you're about to hear could change the way you see global power. Up next, we'll give you the details you need to understand what's really happening and stay one step ahead. This is News for Dummies, where we break it all down to promote your critical understanding of current events. In the crosshairs of the Houthis, the Yemenis backed by Iran launched an unprecedented attack against the historic U.S. aircraft carrier USS Harry Truman. Through a statement, Houthi spokesman Yehia Sari stated that the attack targeted not only the American flagship, but also other warships from both the United States and Israel. This act not only highlights the growing boldness of the Houthis but also their firm determination to defend their sovereignty and the Palestinian cause, regardless of the enemies in their path. The attack on the U.S. fleet was not an isolated incident, but part of a series of military operations launched by the Houthis in recent hours. Sari emphasized in his media statement that the Houthis had carried out an operation against the Israeli army in the occupied Jaffa region, using a drone to precisely target an Israeli military objective. This operation was not only a show of military power but also a clear message to the international community that the Houthis are determined to fight against the Israeli occupation in Palestine, and will not yield to pressure from foreign powers like the United States and Israel, who, according to them, continue to perpetuate an endless war of aggression. Along the same lines, Sari stated that the Houthis continue their struggle in support of the Palestinian people, a people who have been oppressed and subjected to systematic violence by the Israeli state for decades. The inclusion of the word genocide in his statement was no accident. For the Houthis, the suffering of Palestinians in Gaza is a war not only against a people but against humanity itself. By linking their attacks to the defense of Palestine, the Houthis are not only making a political claim but also appealing to international morality. In their view, defending the Palestinians is as legitimate as defending their own nation, and they do not hesitate to use all means at their disposal, including drones, in the face of oppression. The most significant aspect of this attack is the confirmation that the Houthis are willing to escalate their fight, regardless of the consequences. The fact that the USS Harry Truman, one of the symbols of U.S. military power, was specifically targeted reflects the courage with which the Houthis face forces they perceive as invaders. This attack carries not only symbolic value but also strategic importance. The USS Harry Truman is a state-of-the-art aircraft carrier essential for deploying fighter jets and projecting power in the Middle East. If the Houthis manage to severely damage this vessel, it would deal a significant blow to U.S. military might in the region. On the other hand, the U.S. response to this challenge has been predictable, though no less alarming. While the Houthis launched their drones, the Washington government stood firm in its position of not tolerating Houthi attacks or their ties with Iran. The United States has increased its military presence in the region in recent weeks with the deployment of several B-2 warplanes and the presence of other aircraft carriers such as the USS Carl Vinson in the Indian Ocean, ready to respond to any escalation of violence. However, the threat posed by the Iran-backed Houthis demonstrates that U.S. power in the region is no longer absolute, and that power dynamics are shifting, challenging Western hegemony in that area. This increased U.S. military presence in the region has had a direct impact on the geopolitical situation, significantly increasing tensions between Iran and the United States. The news of the Houthi attacks coincides with the scheduled indirect talks between the United States and Iran to be held in Oman. These already tense negotiations will be crucial in determining the future of relations between the two countries. However, the fact that the Houthis continue their attacks could further complicate any de-escalation efforts, especially if the United States does not show a genuine willingness to moderate its policies in the region. Iran's support for the Houthis, particularly in their fight for sovereignty and the defense of Palestine, has been a constant point of friction in international relations. The Iranian government has been a staunch defender of Palestinian rights, and has provided material and logistical support to the Houthis in their fight against the Saudi invasion and other regional actors. Nevertheless, Iranian authorities have made it clear that their support for the Houthis is not just ideological, but also a direct response to the hostile policies of the United States and Israel. Iran sees these attacks as a way to resist external pressure, and has repeatedly warned that any attempt to destabilize the region will have significant consequences for Western interests in the Middle East. As attacks and tensions intensify in the Middle East, the international community watches with growing concern. Countries across the region, from Saudi Arabia to Egypt, have been drawn into a conflict that involves not only local actors but also has deep global implications. The United States and Israel, as main allies in the region, have maintained a hardline stance against the Houthis but have also faced criticism for their unconditional support of the Israeli government's policies in Palestine. Many countries in the Arab world and Africa have expressed their disagreement with the actions of Washington and Tel Aviv, stressing that the true cause of violence in the region is the occupation and suffering of the Palestinian people. If the Houthis manage to inflict significant damage on the USS Harry Truman, the consequences for the United States would be multiple and profound. The economic cost of losing an aircraft carrier valued at approximately $4.5 billion would be devastating. Added to this would be the loss of operational capability in one of the world's most strategic zones, which would severely affect U.S. military plans in the Middle East. Moreover, the image of the United States Navy would suffer a considerable blow, as a successful attack by an insurgent group like the Houthis would cast doubt on the invulnerability of the world's most powerful naval force. From a geopolitical perspective, the downfall of the USS Harry Truman would represent a psychological blow to Washington, as it symbolizes the United States' inability to protect its most valuable assets in a region historically under its influence. This loss could generate a domino effect, encouraging other insurgent groups and hostile nations to challenge the U.S. more openly. It would also affect the White House's credibility with its allies, who might question the viability of its mutual defense promises, especially in such a tense setting as the Middle East. At the same time, the downfall of a U.S. aircraft carrier could have repercussions on domestic U.S. politics. The administration of Donald Trump, already confronted for its international decisions, would face even greater pressure from political and social sectors that oppose military interventions abroad. The economic, human, and political costs of maintaining an active military presence in the Middle East, combined with a direct attack on a symbol of U.S. military power, could trigger a national debate on the need to reassess strategy in the region. At the international level, condemnation of the policies of Trump and Netanyahu will continue to grow as the oppression and violence in Gaza persist. The attacks by the Houthis on the USS Harry Truman and other U.S. and Israeli targets underscore the determination of resistance groups in the Middle East to challenge the interventionist policies of the United States and Israel, two powers whose actions have been widely criticized by the international community. The Houthis' struggle is not just a local war but a battle for justice, sovereignty, and the Palestinian people's right to live in peace. The attack by the Iran-backed Houthis on the USS Harry Truman, a symbol of U.S. military power, marks a significant escalation in the conflict in the Middle East. This unprecedented strike, alongside the attack on Israeli targets, underscores the Houthis' deepening commitment to the Palestinian cause and their bold defiance against U.S. and Israeli military influence in the region. As the Houthis continue to assert their sovereignty and resistance, the implications of their actions ripple through global power dynamics, challenging the hegemony of Western nations in the region. The growing military presence of the U.S. and Iran's support for the Houthis complicate any attempts at de-escalation, setting the stage for a potential broader confrontation. If the Houthis succeed in damaging U.S. assets like the USS Harry Truman, the consequences for the region and the global balance of power could be profound, shaking the very foundations of U.S. military dominance in the Middle East. Now it's your turn. If you found this analysis revealing, leave us a comment with your opinion on this conflict. Do you believe the Houthis truly have the power to sink a U.S. aircraft carrier? What would be the consequences? Subscribe if you haven't already, because we'll be following the evolution of this story minute by minute. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next video, where we'll analyze which other powers might get involved, and how this conflict could escalate into a global crisis. And if you want to learn more about how the Houthis were formed and their role in the Yemen war, click now on the video on screen. I promise it will surprise you.